Welcome everybody to our Open Dialogue 14 in our Bioregional Open Dialogue series of R3.0. My name is Ralf Thum. I'm the Managing Director of R3.0. Together with Bill Bowie, we're going to facilitate this session with an exciting new development that is going to be presented by Andrea Farias. It's about launching a bioregional knowledge commoning database. So that's new and exciting to see. First of that, before we do that, just a couple of words around the engagement in this 1.5 hour dialogue. We're not using the Zoom webcast format, which we think is too anonymous. But that needs that everybody is also sort of like playing to the rules of the game. So we do a little bit of this and then a bit of context setting, which Bill will then do, and then Andrea will present on the mapping database, and then we facilitate an open dialogue of the remaining time of the session before we're closing this dialogue. This is the last dialogue also before our 3.0 conference, which is going to happen in exactly 3 weeks from now. So we're also going to spend, I think, a couple of minutes in the closing to speak about that. So just to repeat, when you are a participant in, or when you were a participant in other dialogues, you've seen this slide before. We're just asking everybody to please stay on mute, as we're not using the webcast format. We welcome that you have your cameras on, but we also understand if you can't, for any reasons, if you want to eat something, just feel free to take your camera off. With regard to questions that you have concerning the presentation or anything else that was mentioned here, please use the chat sidebar and put in your questions right as they occur. We'll curate them in the background to cover them in the facilitated dialogue segment. We may sometimes also summarize or cluster questions simply for efficiency reasons, or we may ask you to voice them yourselves, in which case we ask you that you respect everyone by keeping your questions succinct, on topic, and of course, respectful. As always, we have the Open Dialogue Google document in the background. So this document has proven to be quite valuable to prevent distractions in the sidebar during the session, so that we don't have sort of like side discussions happening in the chat bar while somebody's presenting. This document will remain publicly accessible after the event as a living resource. And if you want to insert something to the Open Dialogue Google document and you want to have your name mentioned, please do so that we can identify which contribution that is. And as you've already seen, we also record the sessions for public posting on our Open Dialogues landing page. And the recording will also be available on YouTube. Okay, what you see here is just a list of all the open dialogues on bioregioning that we had so far. As you heard me say, this is the 14th of these dialogues. We started them in 2024 already, and then taken them through the year 2025, and then into 2026. We'll continue that also after the conference. We'll pick it up again after the conference and see what the conference just fed us with. So with that, I think I'm handing it over to Bill for some introductory comments, and then off we go.
Great, thanks so much, Ralph. And I just want to echo the excitement about this particular open dialogue. Andrea is releasing the next tranche of research that she's been doing, the Bioregional Knowledge Commoning database. So this is really, really an exciting session for us. But just to give you a little bit of background context, so Andrea and I connected in, I think it was early 2025. Tyler Wakefield from the BioFi project connected us along with a few other folks who he was aware of were working on the issue of bioregional knowledge commons or bioregional knowledge commoning. And Andrea was doing independent research at the time, and we at R3.0 were just ramping up our focus on bioregional knowledge commons. And so we invited Andrea to join R3.0 as a research fellow, and she agreed. And the first sort of development from that was we at R3.0 published the preliminary research that Andrea had done. So that's what you see on the left in May 2025, the Bioregional Knowledge Commons, a meta perspective. So that's a great background resource if folks haven't seen that already. It gives you a sense of what Andrea was doing that she's talking about today, sort of the lead up to that. And then on the right-hand side, you can see that the research and resource that Andrea is releasing today also fits into a bigger picture. So in late 2025 or in mid 2025, Andrea and I and others launched a bioregional knowledge commoning community of inquiry and practice. And then late in 2025, we sort of explored what that community of practice might want to do together. And on the right, you have what that collective activity is mapping bioregional practices and patterns in knowledge commoning. And so that's something that we're joined by R3.0 research fellow Eli Ingraham on that, and she's going to share more about that broader project in the conference. We'll mention more about that later in the session. So just giving you a little bit of background context about where Andrea, what she's presenting today, fits into sort of both sort of the historical background leading up to it and where we're heading after that. So next slide, please, Ralph. Great. So this is my slide for handing it over to Andrea. Here's just a little bit of information about her, but I think I'll just, with no further ado, hand it over to Andrea. And it's been such a pleasure working together with you, Andrea. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about the release for today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bill. Yeah, I'm very excited to share this research. Let me just, let's see. Let me just make sure to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we see it. Looks great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so as Bill already mentioned, today we're going to be talking about bioregional knowledge commoning and one particular project or experiment that has been ongoing for well, quite a while now, and finally it's ready for public consumption. So I'm excited to share it with you today. And we'll talk about that a little later, but I'm going to give some context as well. So we're going to talk about the project, where it comes from, Bioregioning and Knowledge Commons, the website itself. But I also want to spend some time talking about kind of the broader idea or kind of other perspectives on knowledge commoning and what's next for us. So I have quite a few slides and quite a lot to cover. So depending on time, I might rush through some things, but we'll see how we go. But I'll also share the slides, and the website is live. And you know, also feel free to contact me after if you have any further questions that we're not able to cover today. Okay, so a bit about me. So my background is in kind of digital innovation and product consulting. So when I decided to leave that and explore the regenerative space or the bioregional space, I guess I'm coming with that baggage of product design and product development, and like looking at the bioregional space with this idea of, well, how can we bring technology to support what's happening here, and how can we use data to support what's happening. I'm also a co-founder of Motiu, or Refi Barcelona. We're now in the process of rebranding, soon to be Motiu, a cooperative supporting bioregional organizers and networks. Bioregional Knowledge Commons Fellow at R3.0. I also work with Commonland on a bioregional financing facility here in Spain. And I'm working with Bioregional Weaving Labs on data management and mapping. And I say all this because I'm also going to touch on some of the other projects in this presentation. So just let's say, like I'm going to be mixing kind of a few different things together that are not all part of concretely the Bioregional Knowledge Commoning project, but to me, it's all part of my thinking. So I think it makes sense, to share it all together. Yeah, so how we got here. So I think Bill mentioned a little bit of the process, especially the publishing of the research that I did last year as a report. And after I kind of did this report exploring this idea of bioregional knowledge commons, there was so much research that I had and so many questions that I had kind of left over. And I wasn't really sure what to do with it. And that's kind of what became this project now. So it ended up being this kind of mapping of case studies and projects, which we're going to talk about now. But really what I want to kind of point out here is that I think there's kind of two different conversations which we're having here, which is a conversation about bioregional knowledge commons and what they are and how we can build them and what they can look like. So, which we'll dive more deeply into, and the website that I'll be presenting, which is more of an analysis. So I think of it as a kind of literature review, a little bit of the space and a set of case studies, but not quite a bioregional knowledge commons just yet. It's kind of an experiment in that direction, and we'll talk about why before we get to see it. Okay, but I also want to point out that there's a lot of people involved in this research. It's not just me, especially in the broader research towards bioregional knowledge commons. So there's R3.0, there's Motiu / Refi Barcelona, and in particular, a particular shout out to Julio Cuarta, who has been supporting this project in particular of the case studies that we're going to see, helping kind of structure the database and create the interface, which I'm going to share with you guys. So thank you for that. We also have a community of practice where we're talking about bioregional knowledge commons, which involves quite a lot of people. Here we have some of the key contributors, but really it's many more than this that I could not fit on this slide. Our advisors and lots of different people and organizations that have either participated actively in the research or inspired the research in some way through their own work or through conversations I've had with, let's say, unofficial conversations with people involved with these organizations. So yeah, I just want to just want to make sure to to say, it's not just me here. There's a lot of people working on this project that are not present today. And so, what is bioregioning? I feel like everyone, or like most people on this call, are probably familiar with the idea of a bioregion or bioregionalism, but I bring it up because for me, I like to think about this idea of, a bioregion versus bioregioning. And, a bioregion, let's say going by this definition, is the geographical terrain. So an area defined by its watershed, its soil, its ecology, and the ideas that have developed of how to live in that place. So how do we live in this place? Whereas for me, bioregioning is really the active process of aligning human systems with natural systems. So it's not so much about the place itself. It's more about kind of the active process of how are we figuring out how to change our economies, how to intervene in our places, to essentially create systems that we want to live in and that are aligned with natural systems. And I think this is particularly important with in relation to the mapping, because a lot of mapping, bioregional mapping, really focuses on bioregions, whereas this particular database, from my perspective, let's say, it's more about bioregioning. So it's more about the processes and activities and the organizations that are doing them, and not really so much about the boundaries or the geography, or let's say the place itself, although it does touch on that. So what is a knowledge commons? So I think also an important thing to tie in here is that for me, bioregioning is also a process of commoning. The process of commoning our places in order to align our economies with natural systems and social systems. I think that process would be impossible without commoning. And what I like about this particular quote here is that it talks about, what is a commons, but also that every commons is a knowledge commons, because every act of commoning, let's say, goes hand in hand with developing knowledge for how to act or be within that commons. And so based on this quote, I kind of try and visualize it a little bit here with this sort of faux mathematical equation. Commons equals community times wealth times protocol. So like a community, a defined body of shared wealth, as David Bollier and Silke Helfrich say here. And for me, that wealth is a resource with value, with a set of social protocols or social norms. And a knowledge commons specifically is, well, exactly that. It's community, where times are wealth, where the resource is knowledge in particular, plus a set of protocols or rules of how to govern that knowledge. And it's particularly important here that within a knowledge commons, that wealth of knowledge is governed by the community of practice, right? So it's not just knowledge that is being created and shared. It's actually knowledge that is created by a community, for the community, and governed by that community, right? And not necessarily open to the public. It might be, let's say, only available to members of that community. So what is the community here, starting from there. So one of the first early things that I did when trying to really kind of get my head around, well, what is bioregioning in practice? I'm hearing a lot about bioregions and ecological boundaries, but what is actually happening? And I created just this simple diagram to help myself understand the community aspect of bioregioning. So for me, it's this philosophy that is of bioregioning that is being translated into place-based processes to try and align our systems with natural systems, and creating outcomes based on that. But really the important part for me here is the network aspect. So there's really two layers of kind of networks here, right? There's place-based networks where organizing teams are working in their place with maybe local inhabitants and other organizations, maybe with also more than human inhabitants of the bioregion, and applying these place-based processes to generate outcomes in their bioregion. But there's another layer which are cross-bioregional networks, in which multiple organizing teams are coming together to receive support, to learn from each other. This is what I call learning networks. So this, or support providers, and this is like, to give some examples, bioregional weaving labs, common land, even Art 3.0 is kind of a support provider of bioregional work. And so I think this is really important in understanding what the community element of this knowledge commons equation is, because there's really two different kinds of communities here. Which translates into two different layers of knowledge commons. So we have the local knowledge commons, which are helping us to understand how to live in that place, how to align it with natural systems, where we might have context-specific ecological knowledge about our bioregion. We might have information about local processes, but then there's also this additional layer that we're calling the meta knowledge commons. So this is, in here, the community of practice is really these cross-bioregional networks. And the objective here is to learn across places, right? To share knowledge between bioregions. And here we really want to surface shared patterns. We want to be kind of aggregating data, facilitating collaboration, etc. So this is more the layer of kind of support across different bioregions, like giving the bioregional organizers the tools and knowledge that they need to act within their bioregion. And the local knowledge commons is local place-based networks coming together to learn how to live in their place. So this is kind of important in understanding how we can think about these the different kinds of knowledge commons that we're creating. And within the community of practice, which you've mentioned, we're mostly focusing on the meta layer. We've been talking mostly about this meta knowledge commons. How can we support this cross-bioregional learning? But of course, a lot of these ideas also apply at the local level as well. And so the next kind of important part of this equation for me is the value. And so I think knowledge commons are not just, I think this wealth equals knowledge times value is really important, because it's not just about documenting knowledge. It's about, what is the actual value proposition for the community of practice in this knowledge commons? What value is it offering through this knowledge that's creating this wealth, and that's kind of enabling the community or incentivizing the community to actually maintain it and participate in the governance. And this image here is just like a very, let's say, broad mapping of some of these value propositions or some of these needs that have come up in different conversations around specifically a meta knowledge commons and what value it can offer to bioregional organizers. And I show this, and it's definitely not complete at all, but I just show this to give an idea or to say there can be many different, let's say, value propositions of a knowledge commons, or let's say different knowledge commons can focus on different value propositions and offer different kinds of value to organizers. And also to say that this database or this experiment that I'm going to present is really, for me, more in this kind of project mapping box on the right. So it's more about, let's say, discovering bioregional projects or more communicating, more around communicating to external actors what is actually happening and getting this broader picture. Okay, so now we're gonna look at the website. But first, yeah, I just want to repeat. So what it actually is a structured analysis of publicly available sources. I think I looked at analyzed over 100 different sources to develop these case studies, which we're gonna talk through, but it's not a bioregional knowledge commons in the sense of, let's say it's not created and governed by a community of practice. It's very much created and governed mostly by me, but it's kind of a step in understanding, well, how to create a bioregional knowledge commons, right? And how to map all this data, how can we organize the data, yeah, just taking us, creating experiments that might help us understand what a knowledge commons governed by a community of practice might look like. And in the process, having a great resource where we can explore case studies. Okay, so now I will share the sorry, 1 second. Well, I'll just go. Okay, so this is the site. You can access it at bioregion.earth, and it's also linked in the slide, as you saw. Yeah, here we have 100+ bioregional actors mapped across 10 themes, which we'll talk about more in a sec. But here, I think you see the purple ones are entries that don't have a case study. So they're maybe on the map, but they only have some basic information. And the ones that are bright yellow are items that have a full case study. So here, the case study, each case study contains a lot of different information about the organization itself, and it's focused on bioregional organizations doing bioregioning in their place. As I said, not bioregions themselves, but the bioregional organizing. Talking about bioregional context, mapping across tags, which in an ontology, which we'll discuss in a sec. And there's kind of detailed information about all these their activities, the activities of the different organizers, and their vision and legacy, and connect it to the different sources that were accessed to create this case study. So you can use this map to browse the case studies, or there's a gallery here which you can filter and look through. And there's, as I said, a lot of content and information here about lots of different organizations. So I'll let you explore this in your own time if you're interested. But really, for me, the most valuable part is this ontology. And so by analyzing these 100+ sources and creating these 50+ case studies and tagging all the activities of the different bioregional organizers with a tag, I developed this ontology, which it's also just an experiment. It's a work in progress to try and, let's say, understand, what is bioregioning from the perspective of what organizers are doing, right? And so a lot of them maybe are overlapping, or maybe they could be polished more in some way, but it's kind of a first pass at this. And I think the valuable thing here is just being able to also compare kind of different activities across different organizers, but that are kind of doing the same thing. So I can come here and say, well, I'm interested in organizing teams working on regional food sourcing. And I can kind of compare different activities here and see what they're doing. And so this has helped me really kind of understand better what is happening in terms of how bioregional organizers are actually, what are they actually doing to create change in their own place and transform their economies, transform the landscape, and organize local networks in this direction. So we can kind of look at themes across community governance, legal stewardship, around collective intelligence, like mapping and indicators, or hubs and centers, and around finance. So it's really, as I said, kind of a first pass trying to organize this information in different ways and uncovering themes. And finally here we have this kind of all the sources that were used for this. So you can also find some great bioregional sources in this list, and actually kind of watch the full video or read the full article if you're interested in diving deeper into that. So I think I'll leave it there in terms of the website itself. But I wanted to dive a bit deeper, as I said, into how I'm thinking about bioregional knowledge commons as a whole. And we talked about value proposition. So what is the value to the community of this knowledge that we're organizing? And through my work supporting bioregional organizers, I've kind of started to think or uncover these two kind of key areas where I think that for me are kind of some very important value propositions that can be addressed through knowledge commons. It's definitely not like an exhaustive list, but this is what is at the top of my mind right now in terms of how can we take the next steps towards bioregional knowledge commoning and specifically create that value for communities. So I'm calling these collective inquiry and finance intelligence. And collective inquiry is really kind of emerged for me at this a gathering hosted by Common Land and Bioregional Weaving Labs in April in Romania. And two of the sessions that were happening in the same time kind of converged on this theme of, how can we learn better from each other? Because when we come together, we learn so much, but when everyone's back home, it's really hard to kind of communicate what everyone's doing and learn from each other. And there's so much more that we can be doing there. And so it really made me think about, well, how can bioregional knowledge commons support this collective learning, support this collective inquiry that can be kind of ongoing over time, right? So thinking about how we can uncover needs and challenges of bioregional organizers and use that to define topics to facilitate live conversations that can help organizers develop experiments or interventions, while at the same time documenting knowledge that is already there, maybe research that has already been done or any kind of knowledge assets, and making all that knowledge available to bioregional organizers at the right time when they need it. Not just having a database, but how can we help organizers uncover kind of the learning that they need in that moment, not just speaking about kind of assets or resources or case studies, but also through facilitating live conversations and using the data to better support this kind of face-to-face or kind of conversational learning. And I have two examples here which have kind of inspired me recently that are kind of thinking in this direction. And one of them is the Hybrid Conversation Toolkit, facilitated by Ben Roberts, which is a collective inquiry into how to support emergent large-scale inquiry. So it's a bit meta in that sense. And they're doing what I've just described. They're mapping their community of practice, what they're interested in, what the themes are that need to be discussed, what the challenges are, actually facilitating conversations to ideate around these topics. And one emergent experiment, for example, is a conversation concierge. So someone who can spot potential conversations in this data and support someone to host this conversation. So decentralizing the responsibility while still kind of giving the support that they need. So this is kind of an example of using data from potentially a knowledge commons to support this more conversational learning. And I'm inspired as well by the Protocol Institute, which is an institute that studies protocols, the often invisible rules that shape how we live, organize, and build technology. And they're harnessing AI for a lot of different experiments around uncovering knowledge also at the right time, like personalized reading suggestions and autonomous agents doing research, posting to a public notebook. So yeah, just another example of how to use technology to uncover data and facilitate conversations. Yeah, and the second key theme that is, for me, really important in this idea of bioregional knowledge commons is finance intelligence. And, maybe I'm a bit biased because I'm working on a bioregional finance project right now in Spain. So this is at the top of my mind. But I really think that this is one of the key value propositions right now for being able to harness and organize data in a way that supports both local communities of practice and this meta layer of cross-bioregional learning. And here, I'm not going to go through this whole diagram, but here I was just trying to map out a little bit kind of what my process has been for doing this project of bioregional financing facility in the Altiplano, and just identifying like some key areas where we've been using data to support this process. So mapping actors in the ecosystem, defining and mapping interventions across different actors and themes, and being able to connect those different interventions with potential finance mechanisms and different types of capital, and being able to organize that data as well to be able to communicate it, not just to entities in the landscape, but also to actually attract capital and funding towards those mechanisms. And then, of course, prioritize interventions and document the impact. So just to say that in the process of doing landscape finance, there's a lot of ways that we need to, let's say, pool data from different organizations and organize it in a way that's going to help us achieve the goals of the community. And which is basically, so this talks a bit about the Altiplano project, which I've just been discussing a bit. But yeah, just to repeat that, we're mapping 100+ interventions across the landscape, hundreds of actors, and trying to organize this into a format that's easy to understand, communicate, and develop finance mechanisms on top of. And you have this this diagram here. Each square within this diagram represents loads of data that has been gathered from local organizations and aggregated about the different interventions that are happening in the landscape and their finance needs, and connecting that with finance structures. And so through this project, we're developing a database where organizations can keep their interventions up to date, and kind of, so it's kind of a living database or a living finance strategy that can be, that can evolve over time. It's not just we create a finance strategy document and it's done, but it's kind of a process that can be, that grows with us as we develop this BFF. Another project that I'm also working related to, let's say, bioregional finance is portfolio mapping with bioregional weaving labs. So again, the goal here is to organize data from the community of practice across different bioregions in order to be easy to use by weavers, and that can actually support their own local work, often doing bioregional finance projects as well. Make sure that the data is easy to find, use, and compare. A shared ontology, which is like inspired by the ontology that I showed you, to be able to compare projects across bioregions, and having the structured data can help us then create lots of different assets to communicate. For example, this map as part of the BWO website, but lots of different kind of visual maps that are showcasing the portfolio and make it really easy to understand what's going on across all these different portfolios and across the different bioregions, and make it accessible for funders. And this last example that I wanted to share is from actually Leon from Dagmar Labs, who is still developing this database of bioregional finance mechanisms. And so I talked a lot about mapping interventions and actors across the landscape, but then having this kind of structured bioregional finance mechanisms can help us then map those interventions to the mechanisms and make the whole process a lot easier. And not just through kind kind of data on a screen, but it actually can be done in person collectively through, for example, a game or a facilitated workshop like the BFF game that Leon facilitated here on the right. And I did kind of a similar or a workshop inspired by this in the Altiplano as well. So just to show how we can also bring the data into the real world and use these structured data sets to make the process of learning how to do bioregional finance a lot easier every time that we do it. Then there's lots of other great examples that I wanted to share, which I wasn't really able to fit into this presentation, but just to say, speaking of value propositions, there's lots of different kind of value propositions, let's say, that we can address through Bioregional Knowledge Commons, like these different projects are doing, like mapping, combining stories with ecological metrics, or combining public data with on-the-ground data collection to show how local projects are contributing to community wealth, like this project in New Mexico is doing, which is really, really inspiring, or just supporting learning about bioregional projects in different ways, as these other two projects are doing. So just to say, there's kind of lots of different ways that we can put data in common, let's say, to support bioregional organizing. And that's why, for me, the whole idea of bioregional knowledge commoning is really more of like a framework or a system or a way that we can think about bioregional knowledge commoning that is not just how do we build a bioregional knowledge commons, but how can we think about what bioregional knowledge commons means, so that depending on our specific needs within our bioregion or within our community of practice, we can kind of build the thing that we need and maybe even connect with other databases or other knowledge commons. So the idea here is that we're mapping out, like, what are all the different layers that we need to think about within a knowledge commons, be it a local one or kind of a cross-bioregional one, thinking about what are the different types of data collection we can do, what is the data that we want to collect, from the really quantitative, right, like ecological data, to the really qualitative, like stories or other kinds of, even images. How do we process that data with kind of our own objectives in mind, our own strategies, in order to uncover insights that are then informing fundraising, that are informing the interventions on the ground and informing the strategic planning again, right? And how do we kind of protect this data and this knowledge through the appropriate governance structures, the rules, the permissions, the protocols that we need so that this actually becomes a knowledge commons, right? We're talking about the final part of this equation, which is the protocols. How can we manage who has access to what data, so that we can keep our data safe and we can make knowledge holders kind of secure in sharing their knowledge and their data, because they know that it's going to be taken care of, and it's only going to be shown to the people that it needs to be shown to. How can we kind of think differently about interfaces, so it's not just a digital website that you can click, which is really cool, but it can also be, a relational interface, like we spoke about. It can be a workshop, it can be a conversation that's supported by this data. An interface doesn't just have to be a website. So how do we use this data in different ways to achieve our goals, to achieve our strategy? And how can we kind of understand the different meanings that we give to our data, so we can kind of bring different data sets or different knowledge commons together without flattening into one way of knowing, but we can maintain that plurality. And we call that ontological knowledge commons. That with the technical side, the federation protocols, so these are kind of protocols that help different databases talk to each other, we can actually federate that knowledge and connect different knowledge commons together. Okay, so I already talked a lot, so I'm just going to go through very quickly on this slide. But the idea is that we are also thinking about, what are the risks of these kinds of processes and how can we address them? So we talked a lot about kind of access and data sovereignty. So we want communities to have control over their data, which can either be technical or it can be through agreements, but that we're thinking about that and centering that. This idea of pluriversality and epistemic justice. So we're acknowledging different ways of knowing and letting that shape our databases and our comments and our interfaces, and not flattening everything into a single way of knowing. Thinking about, we touched a little bit on AI, but how are we making sure that we're kind of not being dominated by AI, but that we're using these data tools to actually support our strategies, and using open source and relational technology when we can, and thinking about not just value propositions, but business models for these platforms, so that we can, or for these systems, so that it's not about unpaid labor, it's actually being resourced properly. So a lot of things to think about there. And this project is kind of just beginning, even though we've done a lot so far. But just to close, I wanted to say, soon we'll be relaunching Motiu, which works on a lot of these topics, which is my team here in Barcelona. We work in Catalonia across supporting organizers with network coordination. These teams are on collective intelligence and regenerative finance. If you're interested in this stuff, then keep an eye out for that. And what's next for us? So where we're going. So we're with the Bioregional Knowledge Commons community of practice and team. We want to do more primary research, direct interviews with knowledge holders, because we already did this kind of, as I said, this kind of case study mapping, or this secondary research exploration, this kind of literature review, let's say, and now we want to support that with primary research, and starting to define that governance and permissions for this data. And just in general, exploring new experiments for knowledge commons, like some of the ideas that I mentioned in this presentation, and looking for funding to do even more experiments in this direction. And how can you get involved? So ask a question. We have about half an hour now, I think, if I'm not wrong, where we can continue the conversation. But even after the presentation, have a look through the presentation, have a look through the map, and provide feedback, or let me know if you want to contribute to the data that's already been mapped. You can also join the community of inquiry practice, but potentially if you contact us and you let us know why you want to be involved and your connection with these themes, and we can discuss whether it's a good fit for you to support the community, or if you're building a knowledge commons within your community, whether it's local or cross bioregional, and you think some of the ideas here can help and support your work, then just reach out, and I'd be happy to talk about that. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrea. Really, really impressive. And I've been working side by side with Andrea, and lots of this is new to me. So I can only imagine how excited the rest of you are about this. So thank you for all of the kudos and applause coming in. A lot to take in. So let's maybe pause for just a moment to let that sink in. And also a lot of really great questions have come in on the sidebar. So I'll just take a moment to pause and let this sink in, and then jump over to the dialogue portion. I'm sure we'll need even more time than that to let it fully sink in. But Andrea, as you were presenting, there was really some robust engagement in the sidebar. And so I want to go first to, I think that the one issue that came up that had a lot of input on it, Dave Wolf first brought this up, and then Kalia followed up on this. Michael, Lennon, Emmanuel, and Wendy Elliott also chimed in on it. The question of the updating, what kind of accessibility would there be? To what degree can bioregions themselves update the information? So, for example, Kalia noted that the Bay Delta Trust is on the list. It's great to have a reference to a video, but there's no link to the website, baydelta.org, and no mention of the 4 bioregional unconferences we have hosted to bring folks together. So just this broad issue of how to make bioregional knowledge commoning a living practice, if you will. So a lot of interest around that.
Yeah, well, I think there's 2 things here, which is how can you potentially, edit or add information to this existing mapping, and kind of like a broader question around, living knowledge commons and updating knowledge commons in general, which, I think from your question, I feel like it's more focused on the first one. Yeah, so I guess updating the knowledge commons, I do want people to be able to update the database, and it is possible. So this is using Notion as the backend, so it is technically possible for you to be able to edit the data of the bioregion yourself, and it's pretty easy. But at the moment, the process for that is you have to contact me, and I give you access to your page, and then you can edit your information, and then it should go live on the website. So if you do want to edit your information, that's the process. Just message me, and then we'll give you access to your page, and you can edit the information. But yeah, I mean, and it should have a link to your website. There's a little website icon. Maybe it's not so clear, something to work on. But if there isn't, then yeah, I'm happy to update that as well. But yeah, I think that there's a broader theme here around living knowledge commons and how do we keep it updated. And I think that's where the value proposition element really comes in. This current database is just a snapshot, really, that I created through this set of case studies that I collected last year. So it's already even a year out of date. That's how long it's taken me to kind of put this together. So yeah, there's in our kind of strategy or proposal that we're working on to think about bioregional knowledge commons, this is kind of something that we touch on a lot, where to go from here in terms of keeping it updated, and offering value to bioregional organizers so that there's a reason to keep it updated, right? It's not just I'm putting my data here because there's a map. There's kind of like I'm part of a community and it makes sense to keep this updated because I'm getting a lot of value out of the community. So that's still something we have to figure out here. That's why it's still, as I said, just a database and not yet a knowledge commons, but it's definitely something that we're thinking about more broadly.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on that a little bit, just chiming in, not on the specific resource that Andrea is releasing here, but more from the perspective of the broader bioregional knowledge commoning research and development that we're doing, which the question of knowledge sovereignty is really sort of central to that inquiry. And with this particular question, the issue of knowledge sovereignty becomes really sort of the rubber hits the road, in the sense of, you know, how is one to know who from a bioregional initiative is authorized, so to speak, to make updates? You know, what happens if one person from that community makes a decision that doesn't have consent, and there's no visibility from the outside into what the internal dynamics are within that community or within that bioregion. So as you can see, I'm voicing, or even, you know, what if somebody represents themselves to be a member of that community, but actually isn't, and, you know, is a rogue actor? I think we can all spin out where this could head. And so these are some of the issues that we're contending with under the sort of broad theme of knowledge sovereignty. There's some other stuff coming in the sidebar I don't think I can track right now, but I'm going to go to, in my tracking of it, one of the early questions, I think, sort of is a bigger picture question. So Michael Lennon pointed to Eleanor Ostrom's definition of commons, that it includes a sense of shared property / stewardship that contrasts or privileges insiders' rights and obligations from those of non-members. So this actually even points into the issue that we're talking to right now. So then he says, by participating in this knowledge commons, whose rights, including IP around the knowledge and meta-knowledge, are privileged? Do all knowledge consumers have rights to mine / enclose these commons? So very much what we were just talking about. Andrea, over to you for thoughts on that that issue.
Yeah. So, well, definitely I think it ties into what Bill said, you know, who has the right to represent an organization in this case. But really, we want knowledge holders to have ownership over their knowledge and maintain ownership over their knowledge, and kind of share it with the knowledge commons, with the idea that we're going to steward the knowledge according to kind of like the principles and the limits that they set for that knowledge. You know, whether at first that's just through an agreement, but eventually kind of enforced through technical infrastructure. And the second thing is, well, based on that kind of, one thing that we've been kind of grappling with is, okay, maybe you have ownership over data that goes into, let's say, a case study about your organization. But what happens when there's kind of multiple sources of information that are being used to create kind of one aggregated item? So for example, if a case study includes information from multiple people or multiple sources, or for example, when we're developing these themes or patterns, maybe they're drawing from multiple sources. And so thinking about also how do we limit these kind of like aggregated knowledge items to the kind of lowest permission level of their sources, you know? So if that theme or that case study where someone wants it to be private, even if all the other sources are public, you know, that would have to be default to private. So that's kind of thinking about how we're doing, let's say, these knowledge ownership, but also in the aggregate. But I think when we are creating these more kind of like aggregated knowledge elements, let's say like a theme or even a case study, then kind of there's a broader ownership. So maybe a case study belongs to all the people within that organization that contributed to the case study, or a theme, let's say, belongs to the whole community of practice, because so many sources of information were used to create that theme that it's really a new knowledge element in itself. So there's kind of a lot of complexities and variations around ownership and how ownership changes depending on how that knowledge is kind of put together and aggregated, which we're still trying to kind of grapple with completely. But I hope that helps a little bit in understanding that question.
Cool, thank you, Andrea. And clearly, I think that isn't something that we're going to resolve in, you know, in this session right now. It's a much bigger question, if you will. So there, Kalia, in addition to chiming in on that one, had a number of inputs here, and so I wonder if you might be able to go off mute, Kalia, and some of them were also sort of comments about the Protocol Institute. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to chime in on those and sort of migrate your comments from the sidebar into the voiced segment here.
Sure. Thanks, Bill. Yeah, I'm Kalia. I was actually a Protocol Institute fellow in the summer of 2024 and was paid to research the protocols for protocol development, which is its own like universe of special protocols, let's say. And I researched a living organism organization called the Internet Engineering Task Force that is responsible for creating and maintaining the protocols that run the internet. Its antecedents date back to 1969, and the graduate students who were part of labs that the US government funded to invent modern computing. Anyways, David Hodgson, some of you probably know him as a regenerative super connector. He got really inspired by the paper because he has a background in technology and was like, wow, some of the governance innovations that they have at the IETF may be worth our bioregional, like the bioregions experimenting with these governance practices because they're so novel relative to conventional governance practices. Not that you can't copy and paste the IETF, but you can certainly learn from it and experiment with it. So he and I are considering like having a learning journey to this unique institution that has its next meeting coming up in San Francisco in November. They meet 3 times a year. I put the links to those in the chat. Yeah, and I can't say enough good things about the Protocol Institute. They actually have their first annual like seminar coming up in September. I think the 21st to the 20. I don't know. It's that week, the 20th week of September. I'm going to be presenting there about group brains and about the protocols we're working on with Project Weave, which is like a underlying we need to really think about the protocols our movements use and how we plot a path to get out from under big tech. We can't do it instantly, but we really need to hold the knowledge that we have in ways that are sovereign to us and to the land. And these questions you're asking about ownership or control of data, and how do we weave the substrate of trust between our bioregions and movements, these are all questions that I and folks I'm working with are talking about. And how do the technologists who are embedded within this movement get better organized, so those who are not technologists can come to us and ask us hard questions about discernment in technology, because it's not easy to figure out. I have I've concerns about choices that are being made across the movement as we speak, and trusting blockchain bros to build financing mechanisms for our movement may not be an ideal choice, as one example. But anyways,
Thank you.
I'm happy to say anything else you'd like, Bill, but hopefully that summarizes some of what I shared in the chat.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much, Kelly. Andrea, I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to any of that if you wish.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to hear that you have worked for the Protocol Institute. I think that they're doing so much work that is very interesting to the bioregional space, but it's kind of different, or maybe like overlapping bubbles. But it's good to hear that there's a bigger overlap than I thought. And on the technology space, yeah, I mean, I think I didn't talk so much about that, but definitely I'm thinking about how to, let's say, progressively get away from big tech, but it's really difficult, especially because a lot of solutions that don't involve big tech can be more difficult to use. And there's kind of still a bit of a trade-off between having something that's maybe more open source, or that is less controlled by big tech, and the actual usability of the products, or the difficulty of actually building something, and sometimes the cost as well. So yeah, I think there's a bit of a trade-off there, and I'm really thinking about how do we kind of create systems where we can progressively move towards more open source tools, but without having to as you said, kind of it being a bit of a roadmap, and it doesn't have to be kind of a barrier to actually using technology in support of bioregioning as well.
Thank you, Andrea. I think that this issue, or the sort of interconnected issues that we're talking about, are going to continue to come up. There is a more, call it technical question, or a series of questions that Steve Melville has asked, and I'll get to those in a moment. But I first want to just voice what Stephen Filler had said about the IP issues. He says the IP issue is very complicated and important. In my view, we need to be very careful about creating ownership buckets that are off limits to others, which seems like big problems of our traditional economic system. Default probably should be a Creative Commons type license. At the same time, rights of attribution, as well as integrity of information and personal information, need to be protected. This may be an area for a community of practice to develop protocols for different elements of IP. I'd be excited to work on that. So I just wanted to get that into the mix. I'm going to make one comment before I hand it over to Andrea, just in the sense of Stephen. I think that you're continuing to engage in this sort of thorny question I think that the one of the angles that we've been focusing on in the broader work that I mentioned up front is indigenous knowledge systems, and in particular, knowledge sovereignty within indigenous contexts, whereby that sort of enclosing of knowledge actually is a very legitimate practice as compared to, say, the tech bros that Kalia referenced. And that kind of enclosure has significant problems involved with it. So just a short way of saying this is very complex. Our fellow research fellow, Eli Ingraham, continually says that we're insane for even taking this challenge on. But there you go. There seems to be some insanity in the room. Andrea, over to you for if you have other other inputs on this question of sort of accessibility and protecting intellectual property or intellectual capital or knowledge in ways that balance sort of this sovereignty question against the sort of abuse side of things.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much to say than what I already said, but just to say that I guess, you know, as you said, Bill, we want to make sure that, you know, we're not thinking of a knowledge commons as something that is necessarily open to the public, to anyone to access. You know, it should be primarily by a community of practice for a community of practice. So if there is a community of practitioners that says, you know, we have to trust you before you can access our data and access our information, I think that's totally valid. You know, we don't necessarily, and I think it's interesting that you reference kind of the tech bros, because on something like, you know, Facebook or Instagram, technically it's kind of anyone can access this information, but it's very much enclosed. So enclosure and, you know, who's able to see the information or the data are kind of two different things, no? So we want to make sure that it's the data and knowledge is kind of harnessed for the benefit of bioregional communities, but at the same time is cared for and stewarded in ways that allows for that supports that work. And that's not necessarily like everything being open, but it's kind of being able to like give different levels of access. Maybe some things we want to be completely public, some things we want to make sure that we're keeping it within a circle of trust. And how do we manage those different levels of access is an important part of this.
That more thorniness here. Steve Melville, as I mentioned, has a couple of what might appear to be relatively straightforward questions. Steve, do you want to go off mute and voice those, or shall I voice them for you?
Oh, go for it, Bill.
So he had two questions that he added to the resources document. One is the Bioregional Weaving Lab database, the same database as bioregioning.earth. And then his second question is, what is the tech stack supporting bioregioning.earth?
Yeah. First question, no, they're two different databases. Just the ontology is kind of inspired by, but they're not currently connected from a technical perspective in any way. What is the tech stack for both? Right now, I'm using Notion a lot as kind of the base. So like the backend, let's say, and using those Notion databases to create multiple front ends or multiple ways to see the data. And the reason that I'm using Notion is because it's just kind of a very complex platform, which is already kind of built and set up in ways that are kind of conducive to managing data. And especially for the bioregional weaving labs work, it requires like dozens of people to be able to kind of go in and change their entries and edit information and use the data in different ways. And in order to support that at this point, the easiest way is just to use kind of an off-the-shelf tool. But I also want to, and it also helps with kind of like progressive building, So what can, I've been kind of trying to use what's available now and building on top of that. And as more resources are available, thinking about, let's say, moving away from certain aspects of this tech stack and into others kind of progressively as we discussed. So that is the current tech stack, just using Notion in the back end, and different front ends are using the Notion data in different ways.
Great, thank you. That may be the most straightforward question and answer in an otherwise, session filled with nuance and complexity, if you will. So we've got about 5 minutes left, and we do want to fill you in on some of the developments going forward. I don't think we have enough time for sort of a significant exchange on the further questions. We'll have to take a look at the resource doc and the chat, and Andrea, maybe you might have an opportunity to engage with folks after that. Any final thoughts from you, Andrea, before we finish things out here?
No, just thank you very much for listening. And your feedback is very welcome. Thank you for your questions. It really helps us kind of think about, identify things we might be missing, or think about this in a clear way. And yeah, we hope to, I'm sure everyone on this call is really interested in, actually making some difference within our bioregions. And so, yeah, I appreciate all of you as well for all the work that you're doing behind the scenes. And I hope that these experiments can support your own work and help us all kind of achieve our goals of aligning economic systems with natural systems. So thank you very much. And over to you, Bill.
Thank you, Andrea. It was very, very generous of you to thank everyone else. So I want to make sure that we thank you for all of the hard work that you're doing, and also the team that you're working with. Really, really great, really impressive work. So there were a bunch of questions about the recording, the deck, etc. And so this is a link to our Open Dialogues page, and that's where we have all of the resources from all of the open dialogues we've ever hosted going back to 2024 on bioregionalism. That's our repository there. So the turnaround time just depends on circumstances for our web admin. At the very latest, we'll have that up, the recording and the deck up by early next week, possibly sooner. So thank you all for your keen interest in that, and I encourage you to check out the other resources there as well. It's really a rich repository of information. There we go. Ralph is reading my mind. We are, as he mentioned, 3 weeks away, less than 3 weeks away from our 13th International R3.0 conference on bioregional regeneration as collapse resilience, Earth-centric biocultural kinship, knowledge, and governance. And as you can hear, the question of bioregional knowledge is a central topic, one of the 3 key themes that we're focusing on. And in fact, we're focusing the second panel session on the question of bioregional knowledge commoning. So Ralph, if you could just go to the next slide. So this session that we've just experienced is in some ways sort of like a step 2 of this series. In particular, our 3.0 research fellow Eli Ingraham will be presenting on the broader body of our bioregional knowledge commoning work, and particularly the practices and patterns research and development that we are working on, as well as having advisors to that project, Melanie Goodchild and Ramsin Kamrushu speak, as well as Benjamin Life, who one of the images that Andrea had in her slides was from the work that Benjamin is doing on bioregional knowledge commoning. So just an encouragement for you to be considering attending that either through a confluence or through individual participation. The last thing I'll say is that I'm going to be presenting on our 3.0's bioregional knowledge commoning work at the Turtle Island Bioregional Congress the week after the conference. So it's September 15th through 19th in the Cascadia bioregion. And I'll be doing that along with Warinaqui Flores, another one of the advisors. So if folks are attending the Congress or thinking of attending the Congress, that's going to be another opportunity, and that's going to be more of a workshop opportunity to really engage interactively. So I think that brings us to the end. Sorry for going a minute over, but thank you very much to everyone for your great questions and engagement. Thank you in particular to Andrea for the great work. And we'll see you hopefully in the conference in 3 weeks. Take care, everyone.